Okay, hi, good evening. I hope I'm audible. And let's get started with the lesson. And yeah, I hope I'm audible, right? Y'all can see the board, and I hope everything is fine from my side. Okay. And I hope I will not lag because right, nowadays it can we have different kind of climates here, right? So it can rain anytime, it can be sunny anytime. So because of that, you will sometimes notice there can be lagging, but I'm sorry because of that earlier. Advance sorry for you. But if I'm lagging, let me know if I'm lagging. Okay, then only I can wait for some time and continue with the lesson. Right. So for this lesson, of course, I will provide recording, but make sure that you can have a good session today to stay in the class. But anyways, yeah, you will receive the recording in my channel. I will be uploading once after the class is done. Right. So again, I wanted to confirm, did you receive the short note? I mean, for what we are completing to a part of the short note, we will be updating. Yeah, you will be able to ask doubts. So once after I explain a certain part of the lesson, I will ask you whether you understood or whether you have any doubts. At that time, you can send me through the chat. But for a specific reason, I will not let you to unmute yourself. That will be a problem because there are so many people, so I don't know who are the authentic students are here and everything, right? So because of that, I'm not leaving that option, but you can send me a text. I will be waiting. I will be replying you patiently. Okay. Right. So shall we get started with the lesson? So I hope you all know about me. So I don't want to give that introduction. So once after the class is done, I'll tell you about the class and then we will finish it off. So first we'll go to the lesson. I love this lesson and this is an interesting lesson. So if you keep on interacting with me, I think this lesson will be very interesting. I will use some good points for this lesson to make sure that you understand so that you will get an idea. And I have already provided you the short note for whatever the things that we are discussing it today as for free. It's not a complete short note, it's a half. So you can have an idea about the short note that I provide also, right? It's a colorful one. I hope you can understand that. So right, shall we get started? Right. So today we are going to start with the unit 30. We are going to start with the unit 30. The heading is the world of life. The world of life. So listen to me very carefully. This lesson is one of the important lessons for your O level as well as for the grade 11 students, as well as it is important for the students who are facing their second term grade 10 exam. Second term grade 10 exams. So it's one of the important lesson, I would say. Right. So I wanted to tell you that this lesson, if you listen to me carefully, you will be able to get this lesson clearly. Okay. So biology is not about memorizing. It's all about understanding. So to make you understand, I will use some interesting facts as well as some funny facts that you will like it. Okay. Right. So let's talk about the lesson. So listen to me, look at the board. So the world of life. So we are going to talk about biology, right? So since we are going to talk about biology, we are going to talk about the living things. So most of us love science because we are going to study about the animals, we are going to study about the plants. So today is the day where you are going to fulfill that dream. So here in this lesson, world of life, in another term, also we can call it as biosphere. We can also call it as what? Biosphere. So the updated part of this lesson is biosphere, or else we can call it as classification of organism. We can also call it as what? Classification of organisms. So the introduction part is about classification of organism. So of organism, when you was in grade 8, when you was in grade 6, you studied some part of classification, like you can remember you had a group of animals. Let's take some animals we know, like animals in the sense including birds, okay? Including birds, including human. So all of them will come under one category as animals. So let's take, for example, I'll take eagle, I'll take cow, I'll take goat, let's take a man, let's take a crow, and let's take lion. Okay, right. So now we have taken what? We have taken cow, goat, eagle, man, crow, lion. So I'm going to teach you what is classification of organism and what is the definition of classify. So when we take a group of animals, now we can take it as a bird or man or whatever the animals here. What am I doing is I am going to group them. I'm going to group them. Like you may have seen some of your school teachers, they will be grouping you in the classroom, right? One of the student who is scoring well, another student who is not that scoring well, we can say it as a weak student. So one student who is strong in that particular subject will be paired with a weak student. Why? To make sure that they are going to have a clear, good communication between them so that one person can help, another person can get benefited. So this is how some school teachers, they will pair it or they will group you into groups. Why? To make sure that you have the different levels. So same like that, we can also group these animals. We can take the eagle, we can take the lion into one group. We can take the group as what? Carnivores. We can take the group as what? Carnivores. We can take the cow and the goat. We can take it as what? Herbivores. We can take the man. We can take the crow. We can take it as omnivores. So you know what is herbivores animals? The animals, they only consume grass. We can say the plants as their food. Then carnivores, they take only flesh. Then omnivores, both the plants and the flesh can be consumed by the omnivorous animals. So now what did I do? I group these organisms into what? Different level. So different level means one level is herbivores, another level is carnivores, another level is omnivores. So based on to their characteristics. So we are seeing their common characteristics, cow and the goat. They both eat plants. So that means we are looking into their common categories and we are placing them into one group. And the lion and the eagle, they are consuming flesh and they are categorized into one group. And then the man and the crow, we take them into one group because we are consuming both the plants and the flesh. So because of that, we call these as classification. So what do you mean by classification of organism? Classifying means what? I am grouping what? Organisms. I'm grouping of organisms into what? Different levels based on their common characteristics. Based on their common characteristics, that you call it as classification. Now you may ask me, teacher, do we need to by heart this definition? Do we need to memorize the definition? No. You don't need to memorize. They're not going to ask you the definition of classification. They're not going to ask any definition in your exam paper. Why? You know, when you was grade 9, when you was grade 8, there was nothing advanced in science that you have to know. So because of that, they try to give you questions as a definition, like you should remember the definition. But when you come to grade 10, when you come to grade 11, definitions are not that needed because the main thing is you have to understand. So understanding is prioritized in this lesson. So you have to understand what is classification. So simply, without even by hearting, without even memorizing, you can tell me the definition of classification. What are you doing? You are grouping what? Organisms into what? Different levels. Why? How? Based on their common characteristics, that you call it as what? You call it as classification. Now, let me tell you that. Now, why does your teacher classify you into groups? Why does she put you into groups? Because for her, it's easy to understand what are your perspectives, what are your needs, what are your wants. At least your friend will help you. So, because of that, they are grouping. Same like that. In science, we group the animals for easy to study about them easily. So easy to study about the organism, and not only that, to understand the relationship of these animals, to identify what the relationship between different groups of organism. Like we will understand cow, lion, they are not coming into one group. Why? So we will learn, we will research about that, and we will learn. So for that reason we are grouping. Again, what can we say? Again, we can study about each and every, that means we can study about the organism commonly without even touching them individually. That means I don't want to study about the goat separately. I don't want to study about the cow separately, because cow and the goat has the same features, same characteristics. So whatever the animals comes under the group of herbivores, they will have the same features. So do I want to study about each and every animal separately? No. So I can study about one group and perfectly I can recognize rest of them. So again, they ask this part in exam, like why do we need to classify animals? Or they will ask you significance of classification of organism. Sometimes they will ask you, if you are very new to the lesson, especially second term of your grade 10, they can ask you, mention two significance of classification of organisms. So one thing is what? Easy to study about organism. What is the next thing? To understand, to easy to understand about the relationship between different groups of organism. If you remember these two, that's enough. Clear? Got the idea? Understood? Any doubts in this part? Any doubts in this part? Any doubts? This is an introduction. Still, we didn't get into the lesson. So this is what you have to understand. Right. So listen to me carefully. Now we are going to study about classification of organism, right? So there are a group of animals. There are so many animals. So what are we doing? We are grouping those animals into what? Into groups. We are grouping those animals into groups. That means based on their common characteristics. So this is what we call it as what? Classification of organism. So why are we classifying this organism? To easy to study easily about them, we are classifying. Then what else we can say? What else we can say? We can understand the relationship of each group of organism. For that reason, we can what? For that reason, we can learn the classification of organisms in detail. So that means they are asking you, what is the benefits of learning classification of organism? Did you understand? Clear with that? So that's it. Right now we have learned. Got it? Got it? No doubts, right? We didn't even do anything yet. Right. So listen to me. So now we are going to study the methods of classification of organism. So we are going to study what? Methods of classification of organisms. So in this lesson, especially in biology, you have to either learn about the experiments or you have to learn about the names of the scientists to introduce these things. So the methods of classification, that means there was a scientist who brought different methods of classification. So we have to learn about it. We have to learn about certain scientist names. So the first scientist who brought the idea of classification is Aristotle. So the scientist Aristotle is the scientist who brought the idea of what? Classification. Then after Aristotle, there was another scientist who brought a successful classification. So successful classification means a perfect one where everyone can understand. So that was Carolus Linnaeus. So Carolus Linnaeus is a You can also call it as Carolus. You can also call it as Carolus, or we call it as Carolus. So Carolus Linus. So when you talk about the Carolus Linus, he is also one of the scientists to bring up what? To bring up the successful classification. So there are two methods of classification. One you call it as artificial method. Another one you call it as the natural method. So that means there are two types of classification, artificial classification. Other one is what? Natural classification. So come back again. So we have to study about the methods of classification, right? So who is the first scientist to bring up the idea of classification? Scientist Aristotle. Especially MCQ, they will ask you. Then after Aristotle, there was another scientist brought who brought the idea of successful classification, that is Carolus Linus. So Carolus Linus is one of the scientists to bring up what? To bring up the successful classification. So there are two methods of classification. One is artificial classification. Another one is a natural classification. So I'll give you a small heads up to the artificial classification. It's easy, nothing to get confused. So artificial classification is something that we talk about presence and absence. For example, have you learned dichotomous scheme? Like grade 6, we will take the with horns, we will divide without horns. Can you remember? Like cow with horns, cow. Then if I take the crow, crow without horns. Then four-legged, we will say animal with four legs. Then cow will come under the four legs and two legs, like that. Have you learned something like that when you was in grade 6, dichotomous key? So that dichotomous key will come under the artificial classification. So when we was in grade 6, grade 7, 8, we all was learning about artificial classification, where we group the animals without wings. We also divide with their, what do you say, divide with their weakness. So this is the artificial classification, something where we can do by ourselves. Okay, this is what we call it as artificial classification. But artificial classification does not give you a complete idea of classification. So that is about artificial classification. So now we are going to talk about natural classification. So natural classification will explain you like how are they being divided, especially morphological features, psychological features. Based on their features, biological features, we will be dividing. Like based on their biological features, psychological features, morphological features, based on those features only we are dividing. So when you divide those animals based on those features, we will easily understand the relationship between the animals. So that is the natural classification. Again, in your exam paper, they will not ask you to define artificial classification and natural classification. They will just ask you to explain. If you are explaining, you can just explain what you have understood from the lesson. Clear? Got it? There is no exact terms, there is no exact definition for this. You have to understand what we learned in grade 6 was the artificial classification, which does not give you a deep idea about the animals. But natural classification will give you the deep idea about the animals. Clear with that? Got the idea? Understood? Any doubts? Any doubts? Any doubts? Got the idea? Right. So now where are we moving? We are heading up to the main part of the lesson. From here, the lesson will be getting started. Right. Listen to me. Now we are going to study about the natural classification. We are going to study about what? Natural classification. Especially we are going to talk about how the real or how really organisms are getting into groups. So listen to me. So when you take organism will be divided into three main groups. We call it as domains. We call it as what? Domains. So domain is introduced by the scientists. We call it as Carl Woese. We call it as what? Carl Lewis. They will ask you in exam the scientist name. You have to know. You have to know the scientist name, especially MCQ. To get good marks, you have to know the scientist name in this lesson. Okay. So Carl Lewis is the scientist to introduce three domains. Domains in the sense think like groups. So now we are going to study about what? Now, can you remember when you was in grade 10, unit 6, you studied when like we studied how human, let's take the human, or let's take the organism. So what did you learn? If you take organisms are made up of what? Cell. Combination of several cells, you form tissues. Combination of several tissues, you form what? You form organs. Combination of several organs, you form organ system. Then combination of system, you form organism, right? Same like that, we are going to study the hierarchy. So hierarchy level of organization of organism. So hierarchy level means what? How the organisms are organized into different groups. So how do we say? We call it as what? Hierarchy level of organization of organism. That means how organisms are classified, how they are being into groups. So that hierarchy level only you have to study in order. They will ask in your exam in order, so make sure to remember them in order. I am going to teach you a easiest method to remember. So I'll first write out the easy method. So I used to remember like this: Don, King, Philip came out for a good soup. So this is the hierarchy level. That means hierarchy level in the sense how organisms are classified into groups. So first, organisms will be divided into domains. From the domains, they will be divided into kingdoms. The animals, so the plants will be divided into what? They will be divided into kingdoms. After they are divided into kingdoms, from the kingdoms, they will be divided into phylum. They will be divided into what? Phylum. I'll tell you what is phylum. I'll tell you what is phylum. Phylum in the sense whether they are vertebrates or invertebrates. Then they will be divided into class. They will be divided into class. Can you remember you studied under vertebrates? You have mammals, species, amphibian. So same like that. If you take a human, if you take a man. If you take a man belongs to one domain. He will also belongs to one kingdom. From that kingdom, whether he is a vertebrate or invertebrate, we will get to know. Then does he belongs to mammal group mammal, or whether he's belong to the apes, like that. Then you will study the order. After the class, you will get to know about the order, whether they are belong to any order. We call it as primates. They will not ask in your exam. You can just have an idea. This is order. Then family. Which family are you belong to? If you take the cat, tiger, all of them, they belong to cat family. Then good. Genus. What is your gene? So what is the genus? We belong to Homo. Then species. S stands for species. We belong to what? Homo sapiens. We belong to what? Homo sapiens. So this is the order of organizing organism. So what is the order of organizing organism? So what is the order? What is the order? So hierarchy level of organization of organism. So that means if you take an animal will be divided into domain. From the domain, they will be divided into kingdom. From the kingdom, they will be divided into phylum. From the phylum, they will be divided into class, order, family, genus, and species. So this is how they are being divided according to the Carl Woese. According to the Carl Woese. So who is the person to introduce the domain? That is Carl Woese. So he was the person to introduce the
domain. Are you clear with that? I know you can't remember as domain, kingdom, phylum, class because you will get confused with the order. You have to remember the order. That's why I have given you a easiest way. So this one is not mentioned in your short note. You are supposed to write it by yourself. Either use a sticky note, you can use your writing book, or on the textbook you can write it in the corner, because this is a small easiest way that you can remember the order of classification of organism. So this is how I remember. Even if you ask me to tell me the order without even knowing this, I will not be able to tell. So this is how I remembered when I was doing my O levels, because that's way easy for me to remember. Okay. Okay, you can take the spelling as this, Macargus. You can take this. So there are two ways, okay? So as I learned, it was WHOSE. You can take the other one, which is mentioned in your textbook, but most probably they will not ask you to write. You have to select it in the MCQ, right? Yes. Clear? Okay. So these are the orders of what? These are the orders of the organization level of organism. If you cannot find that family in the organization level, make sure to write it down, because there can be some mistakes in typing. So you can note it down and you can write it down. Okay. Right. Okay. So shall we move forward? Right now we are going to study the 3 types of domain. What are the 3 types of domain do we have? So when you take organism can be divided into how many domains? It can be divided into 3 domains. So who introduced the domains? Carl Woese is the one who introduced the domains. Okay. So first domain, we call it as domain archaea. Domain yeah, you have to know the name. If you are a new student, if you are new to grade 10, yes, you should know the name. If you're already grade 11, you will know that. So domain archaea. Then you have domain bacteria. Domain bacteria. Then you have domain eukarya. So what are the 3 domains that we have to know? Domain archaea, domain bacteria, domain eukarya. So we have 3 domains. So we have how many domains? We have 3 domains. So right now we have to talk about, now these domains are there, right? These domains will be divided into kingdoms. They will be divided into what? They will be divided into kingdom. So you have to study about kingdom. That means specially under the domain eukarya. Under the domain eukarya, it will be divided into 4 kingdoms. How many kingdoms? We have 4 kingdoms under the domain what? Under the domain eukarya. So number 1, you will have kingdom fungi. You will have kingdom fungi, or we can say fungi. Then you have the domain, you have the kingdom protista. You have the kingdom protista. And then you have the kingdom plante. You have the kingdom what? Plante. And then you have the kingdom animalia. You have the kingdom animalia. So first, organism can be divided into 3 domains: domain archaea, domain bacteria, domain eukarya. You will be studying about the bacteria in detail. You will be studying about the eukarya in detail. And under the domain eukarya only, you will divide into 4 kingdoms. One, you will study about kingdom fungi, protista, plante, animalia. You will get all the details about it. Clear? Got it? Right. So now we are going to talk about domain archaea. So let me give you an idea about domain archaea, and then I'll come to the domain bacteria. So domain bacteria will be a very big part, and domain archaea is a very small part you have to learn. So domain archaea, they are belong to what? They are belong to prokaryotes. Prokaryotes in the sense, you know very well, when you have a cell, you will have a nucleus, right? In unit 6 you studied, you have nucleus in every cell. If the cell is without nucleus. If you have a cell without nucleus, we call it as prokaryotes. That means this domain archaea, they are also like microorganism, but they do not have a cell. That means they do not have a nucleus in their cell. They do not have nucleus in their cell. So that means they are having prokaryotes. They are considered as what? Prokaryotes. So prokaryotes in the sense their cells doesn't contain what? They does not contain the organized nucleus. And also this kind of domain archaea, they can live in extreme environment. So like they can live in a lava, volcanoes, hot spring, high saline environment like polar ice caps. So these people, they can what? These they are like microorganisms. So most of them, they live in hostile environment. So hostile environment in the sense like very extreme environment, even the humans cannot live there. So like deserts, volcanoes, hot spring. So in those areas only these domain archaea can be found. And most of the domain archaea, they cannot be killed by antibiotics. You know what is antibiotics, right? So antibiotics means a kind of a medicine. If we supply the medicine for it, they will not die. They are very strong. So that is about domain archaea. So domain archaea, what can you say? They are not sensitive to what? They are not sensitive to the antibiotics. Of the time, we do not get questions about domain archaea. The main questions comes from the domain bacteria, domain eukarya. Under that, you will have these important kingdoms will be considered in your exam paper. So shall we move to the domain bacteria? Yes. Any doubts in the domain archaea? Okay. Right. So listen to me. I'll explain about bacteria in detail, nothing to by heart. So listen to me very carefully. So now, when we talk about domain bacteria, you have to know, like, have you heard about bacteria now when you was in grade 6 to 8 to 9? You all have heard about bacteria, right? Can you see the bacteria present on my hand? Can you see the bacteria that is present on my hand? No, you cannot see. So you cannot see the bacteria through your naked eye. Why? Because they are very tiny. So you need to use what? What should we use to observe the bacteria? To observe the bacteria, we need to use what? Microscope. So what is the first characteristic of the bacteria? We call it as microscopic. They are what? Microscopic. So if I wanted to say they are microscopic, that means you have to understand we observe them through the microscope. So domain bacteria is a prokaryotes organism. So just now I explained you what is prokaryotes. Prokaryotes in the sense they do not have a nucleus, or we can say they do not have that means they have an unorganized nucleus. Unorganized nucleus, or they do not have a nucleus. So that means bacteria is considered as what? Prokaryotes. But if you take the domain eukarya, this domain eukarya are considered as eukaryotes. They are considered as what? Eukaryotes. Eukaryotes in the sense a cell with the organized nucleus, or with the nucleus, we call it as eukaryotes. We call it as what? Eukaryotes. So eukaryotes means the cell with organized nucleus, and with the nucleus, we call it as what? Eukaryotes. So domain eukarya considered as eukaryotes. But domain archaea, domain bacteria, they belong to the prokaryotes because they do not have an organized nucleus. Clear? Got the idea? Right. So listen to me carefully. Now we understood that bacteria is microscopic and they are prokaryotes. prokaryotes as well, right? So listen to me carefully. So when you talk about bacteria, you studied in grade 9, they are unicellular. They are unicellular organisms. So when we say uni, what do you mean by uni? One. What do you mean by cellular? They are made up of one cell. So when you take a bacteria, you can have bacteria, and the type of bacteria that is with one, like that is with one cell. Now most of the bacteria are with one cell, and there is a bacteria which is in green color. You can find a bacteria which is green color, which means they can produce their own food. Most of the bacteria is not autotrophic, they are heterotrophic, but there is a bacteria which can make their own food. We call them as cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria. What is the name? You have to remember the name. They will ask you. So you should know what? That bacteria, we call it as what? Cyanobacteria. What's the speciality of this cyanobacteria? This cyanobacteria can produce their own food. They can produce what? They can produce their own food. So bacteria is unicellular, and there is a bacteria which is autotrophic. We call it as what? Cyanobacteria. Now I can ask you a question. Can bacteria enter your body? Can bacteria enter your body? Yes, they can enter. And sometimes when you take your digestive tract, you know your stomach, right? When you take your digestive tract, you have the food, right? You have the food right inside your stomach. So that means we can say in our digestive system. Now, you may have heard your parents say there can be some kind of a thing that can digest your food. We say like worms, but it's not worms. So that means what you need to understand, inside our digestive system, we have good bacteria which help us digestion, which help us in what? Digestion. So you have to understand, if there is a bacteria inside the stomach, is it harmful? No, it is not harmful. If you have, now you have heard, right? Drink probiotic yogurt. Probiotic. Now drinking yogurts and all considered as probiotics. That means they have some good bacteria that will help your gut health. That will help your gut health, especially that will help you in digestion. So when you talk about bacteria, can bacteria enter your body? Yes, they can enter. But where can you see the bacteria? Inside your digestive system. Is that harmful? No, they are not harmful. What are they helping? They are helping in digestion. So that means we need to understand bacteria. Some bacteria is not harmful. But sometimes some people, they get urine infection. Have you heard about urine infection? Mainly caused by whom? By the bacteria. So that means, let's say you are using a washroom which is not clean, or you are not going to the washroom on time, you're not passing your urine on time, you're storing for a long period of time. End of the day, you are getting urine infection. This urine infection is what? Caused by whom? It is caused by the bacteria. So is that bacteria is useful? No, it is harmful. So some bacteria, they can cause you diseases. We call that kind of bacteria as pathogens. I hope you can remember your grade 9. You studied the word called pathogens. Pathogens means what? The microorganism that causes you disease. We call them as pathogen. So what is the bacteria that is causing you disease? Pathogenic bacteria. So this bacteria, some bacteria is useful for us. Some bacteria is harmful for us. So did you get an idea? Now I'm not letting you to by heart. I'm making you to understand about bacteria. So what did we learn about bacteria? So bacteria is microscopic. They do not have an organized nucleus. They are unicellular. There is a green color bacteria. We call it as cyanobacteria. They are good in producing their own food. We have bacteria in our digestive tract to help in digestion. And bacteria also can cause you disease like urine infection. Clear? Got it? Understood? Right. So I hope in everyone's life, we have faced urine infection, isn't it? We all of us are human. We might have faced urine infection. So now what is the substance that you use to kill the infection? Have you studied this in grade 9, something called antibiotics? Have you heard something called antibiotics? What do you mean by antibiotics? Antibiotics means what? You take the medication, you take the medicine to kill what? You take the medicine to kill the bacteria or fungi. So that means you are taking a medicine. We call it as what? Antibiotics. So now this pathogenic bacteria has to die, right? This pathogenic bacteria has to die. So if I go to doctor saying, okay, I have urine infection, and my doctor will prescribe what? My doctor will prescribe antibiotics. So can you take antibiotic alone? I mean, without consulting a doctor, unwantedly, can I go and take an antibiotic? No, don't do that. Let's say, for example, now I'm having cold and cough. I'm having cold and cough. So when I have the cold and cough, and if I'm taking an antibiotic, is that correct? Is that correct? Think, will you? Remind yourself your grade 9 lessons. Cough, cold, caused by whom? Virus. Cold, cough is caused by virus. Do we have an antibiotic for the virus? No, we don't have antibiotic for the virus. We have only vaccines for the virus. For the killing the virus, we have only vaccines. So if I'm unwantedly taking an antibiotic for the cough and the cold, what will happen? Will my cough and cold stop? No, it will not stop. What will happen? Antibiotic in my stomach can go and kill my good bacteria. If my good bacteria dies, what will happen? My digestion will become slow. My food will not digest. I will end up in some other diseases. So that's why they say without consulting a doctor, you are not supposed to take any antibiotics. Clear with that? Got the idea? So virus is not sensitive to antibiotic, but bacteria can die because of the antibiotics. So can you remember the antibiotic you studied in grade 9? Amoxicillin, penicillin, tetracycline. Can you remember these antibiotics you studied? So these antibiotics can kill different types of bacteria based on the diseases. So what you need to understand, just now we studied, domain archaea is not sensitive to antibiotics, but domain bacteria is sensitive to antibiotics. So this is also another characteristic of whom? Another characteristics of the bacteria. Clear with that? Got the idea? Understood? So I'm talking about the useful things about bacteria. I'm talking about the wasteful things about the bacteria. So you have to understand what the harmful things, useful things that is caused by the bacteria. So until here, did you understand? Until here, did you understand? Yes. Antibiotics can have side effects, like you can have headache, you can have nausea, like you can have kind of a side effect, not a big one. Like you can have, every medicine has a side effect. There is no medicine without a side effect. Okay, right. So now we are talking about some disadvantages of bacteria. So what are the disadvantages we learned? So bacteria can cause diseases to whom? Human. Okay, now let me ask you a question. Now you should ask me a question. In this particular question, there is a harmful thing, there is a useful thing about bacteria. Let's say, for example, there is a person who passed away. Let's imagine someone passed away. So after all the ritual is over, what will you do? If that person is passed away, you will put that person into a coffin. Or what you will do, you will bury them under the soil. You will bury that person under the soil. Now, after 1 year, if you open that soil, if you open the dead body or the soil, will you get that person with the muscle? Like, will you get that person with a muscle? No, you will not get that person with a muscle. The maximum you will be able to see what? You will be able to see the bones, isn't it? So when you take your muscle, you know that your muscle is made up of protein, right? Complex protein. So can you tell me what is the process that is happening inside the soil? Can you remember you studied a process that is taken place breaking down the complex molecule into simple molecule under the soil? We call it as what? Decomposition. We call it as what? Decomposition. So who are the two microorganisms helps in decomposition? One is bacteria Another one is the fungi. So fungi and bacteria are both the partners who does what? Who does the decomposition process. My question is this a useful thing about bacteria, or is this a harmful thing about a bacteria? Is this an advantage or this is a disadvantage? What do you think? Decomposition is an advantage or disadvantage? It is an advantage. Why? Imagine if there is no bacteria, if there is no fungi, what will happen? What do you think? What will happen? There will be so many corpses. There will be so many dead bodies around us where we will not live peacefully. So because of that only, we have the bacteria helping in what? Helping in decomposition. So this is one of the useful things. So let me take the same incident in a different way. Now let's imagine, now you have made lunch. Okay, let's say your mama has made lunch, and let's say the lunch today is chicken. Today is what? Chicken. Now, can I ask you a question? Is the chicken is a dead body or a living body? Is it a dead thing or a living thing? It is a dead body. So now you are eating this dead chicken. You are eating this dead hen. So what are you doing? You are eating it. Now my question is, if the decomposition is occurring in the chicken, what do you call it as? You studied in grade 8. What do you call it as? If the decomposition is taking place in the food, we call it as what? We call this as food spoilage. We call it as what? Food spoilage. What do you call this as? Food spoilage. Is this an advantage or a disadvantage? This is a disadvantage. So remember, what you have to understand is, you have to understand bacteria can be advantageous and there can be disadvantages also found in a bacteria. So bacteria can do the decomposition in human as well as it can do the decomposition in the food. So if the decomposition is taken place in a dead body, it is a what? Decomposition. It's an advantageous part. And if you take the decomposition taken place in the food, it's a disadvantage. We call it as what? Food spoilage. So imagine if a person died, within how many hours are we supposed to? How many hours are we supposed to bury them? Within 24 hours. Why do they say within 24 hours we are supposed to bury? Because that person can rot. That person can start decompose him itself. Why? Because the decomposition will start after 24 hours. So I have seen some of the dead bodies, they keep it for about 7 days. Can anyone explain me how do they keep that dead bodies in 7 days? How do they keep? Like that person will look well groomed and that person will be like sleeping position, but you know they keep for a long period of time. How? What do? They remove the dead body organs, so that person's organ is completely removed. You know that person's organ is completely removed, and they add cotton ball. They add cotton inside that person's body, and they filled with a substance, we call it as formalin. So formalin means what? It is a substance that can kill bacteria and fungi to stop decomposing that dead body. So that we call it as what? Now you have to understand, when will the decomposition will start? So decomposition will start within 24 hours, but some people, they will bury the dead body within 24 hours because they are not going to do the procedure here. But some people, they keep it for a long period of time with the dead body. Especially they will be removing all the organs from the body. And what do? They add cotton ball, including the substance called formalin. So formalin will be added, especially they, like, let's say there is a dead crime scene. So to keep that dead body for a long period of time, some people, they add formalin to that dead body to keep for a long period of time until the investigation is over. So you have to understand, decomposition will start within 24 hours. So that's why in your home, if they cut a chicken today, most probably you will eat it today. Or what do? You will be placing them in what? Refrigerator for 3-4 days until the freezer. Why? What's the reason do we keep them inside the freezer? Doesn't the bacteria enter to the freezer? No. Why? If the temperature is very less, the bacteria's growth will be very slow. the bacteria's growth will be very slow. If the temperature is very high, that's why they say nowadays it's very hot climate, right? The climate is very sunny. But if you keep the food long period outside, what will happen? It will start to spoil. Why? When the temperature is high, the bacteria favorable to grow. You have studied in grade 9, right? So due to the moisture, due to the temperature, what will happen? The food will start to decompose, which we call it as food spoilage. So these are the small facts you have to remember about what? Bacteria. So, and also you have studied like curd, yogurt, we make the beer and things like useful things in the world, especially about what? Bacteria. So bacteria help us to produce what? Dairy products. It will also help us what? Dairy products. Have you heard like we take the coconut husk. We have seen coconut husk, the fiber. The coconut fiber, what you do? You put the coconut with the fiber, with that hairy structure into the water. After some time, when you take the coconut with the fiber, you can easily remove that fiber off. Why? What's the reason the fiber is getting loosened? What's the reason? Because the decomposition is taken place on that particular area. So who is helping us to remove that fiber? That is bacteria. So bacteria can do us good things as well as bad things. You have to understand. Got the idea? Understood? Clear with that? It's not over. There are some more things about bacteria. So when you take plants, so you have studied nitrogen fixation when you was in grade 9. I'm just referring all your grade 9s because your grade 9 things are here in grade 10. So that's why we are referring all of your grade 9 lessons to the grade 10. So have you heard about nitrogen fixation? Nitrogen fixation, what did you learn in grade 9 about nitrogen fixation? What is it about? So you have some plants, they can't grow without nitrogen. At the same time, they cannot what? They cannot absorb nitrogen. So what? Who is helping to absorb the nitrogen? So when you take the plants like what? Leguminous plant. If you take the leguminous plant, under their root, they will have like a bulb like this. We call it as what? Root nodules. Inside the root nodules, you will be finding what? You will be finding a bacteria. We call it as rhizobium bacteria. Another name, we call it as Azotobacter bacteria. Azotobacter bacteria. So Azotobacter bacteria, rhizobium bacteria is present inside the soil as well as they are present inside the root nodules of the leguminous plant. What do? The nitrogen will have triple bond. You studied in grade 10, unit 10, nitrogen is having triple bond, where the nitrogen will not break their bond easily. So who is helping the plants to grow with the help of nitrogen? That is bacteria. So what will bacteria do? Bacteria will break the bond of the nitrogen, absorb the nitrogen, convert the nitrogen into nitrate. It will convert the nitrogen into nitrate. So plants will get the nitrogen in the form of nitrate. They will be receiving it in the form of what? Nitrogen in the form of nitrate. So therefore, the plant can grow taller, wider, as well as they can bear more fruits. So this is an advantageous part of the bacteria. So what is the advantageous part? Fix atmospheric nitrogen. So they will be fixing the atmospheric nitrogen in the soil. So that is one of the advantages of what? Advantages of the bacteria. Did you understand before I go further? Did you understand about it? So you have to get to know about bacteria. Especially you have to know what? You have to know about bacteria, their function, their advantages, disadvantages. So everything you have to know, right? Okay, right. So when you take about bacteria, bacteria also have another feature. They are present in different shape. They also present in different shape. You can find the bacteria in circle shape. You can find the bacteria in the rod shape. Also, you can find it in a comma shape. You can find them in a spiralium shape. So if you find the bacteria in the circle or like a ball like a shape, we call it as coccus. If you find them like a rod shape, we call it as bacillus. We call it as bacillus. And then if you like a comma like a shape or like a V like a shape, we call it as vibrio. We call it as Vibrio. If you find the bacteria in a spiral shape, we call it as Spirillum. We call it as what? Spirillum. So you all have studied about Streptococcus. Can you remember the word Streptococcus, a type of a bacteria? Usually, a bacteria's name is given by their shape. So that means the bacteria name is Strepto and we say the shape as coccus. That means what is the shape of this bacteria? This shape of the bacteria will be the shape of the sphere. So that's how they give the name for the bacteria. So bacillus, we can say, like we have some we have streptococcus, we have lactobacillus bulgaricus. So lactobacillus in the sense what is the shape of that bacteria? Rod shape. Vibrio cholera, what is the shape? Vibrio shape. Then we also have so many shapes of bacteria. So these are the common shapes. So especially you have to know the features of what. They will not ask these names in your exam. They will not ask, but just to have an idea, I'm saying they have different shapes of bacteria. So you need to have to understand bacteria can be present in what? It can be present in different shapes. Clear? Got it? Understood? Any doubts? Any doubts before we go to the sexual and asexual reproduction of a bacteria? Any doubts? Any doubts about the bacteria? Anything you wanted to by heart? There's nothing to by heart. All you have to understand about the bacteria. That's it. Clear? Let me know if you have any doubts. If you don't have doubts, let me know as no. Right, now we are going to talk about the reproduction of the bacteria. So listen to me, this has come many times to your exam paper. So we have to learn. Now when you take bacteria, bacteria can have both the types of reproduction. So one type of the reproduction they can undergo is asexual reproduction. What do you mean by asexual reproduction? One organism is involved in asexual reproduction. Bacteria also can undergo sexual reproduction. They can combine with another bacteria and they can reproduce. So that is sexual reproduction. So most of the time, bacteria will undergo asexual reproduction. They will undergo what? Asexual reproduction. So when it comes to the bacteria, they will most of the time undergo what? Asexual reproduction. So there are three ways of asexual reproduction. One, you call it as binary fission. One, you call it as what? Binary fission. So according to science, when we say bi means what? What do you mean by bi? Bi means we call it as two. Fission in the sense, in scientific term, like we say it as breakdown. That means that particular bacteria is breaking into two halves. So let's say, I'll talk about the binary fission. Let's say, for example, you have a bacteria and this bacteria is growing to the maximum size. So once the bacteria comes to a maximum size, what they will do is they will divide it into two. So one part of this will become an older one, another part will become a new one. So this is, we call it as what? Asexual reproduction method of what? Bacteria. One of this is binary fission. So usually this kind of a binary fission is done by the cell division called mitosis. By the help of the mitosis cell division only, they are undergoing this binary fission method. Clear? Got it? So next one is cyano, like especially cyanobacteria is there. I'll give you this. We call this method as fragmentation. So if you take the bacteria will undergo another asexual reproduction, especially the bacteria called cyanobacteria. Okay, cyanobacteria only will undergo this kind of a reproduction, asexual reproduction, that we call it as fragmentation. So let me explain you about fragmentation. Have you seen lizard? Now when you hit the lizard, have you seen the lizard will remove the tail, remove its tail? So if you see the lizard after 1 month, you will see that lizard with or without the tail. That means you will see a new tail grown for that particular lizard. So that you call it as fragmentation method. So same like that, if you take the cyanobacteria, if I cut them into, let's say, multiple pieces, that particular cut part will regrow into a new bacteria. It will regrow into a new bacteria. So that we call it as what? Fragmentation. So cyanobacteria will cut them into two halves. One part will grow, another part will also grow. So they will be forming two new bacteria. So that's how this cyanobacteria is producing new bacteria through the fragmentation method. Then the third method of asexual reproduction is budding. We call it as what? Budding. So budding in the sense, let's say there is a bacteria. Now this bacteria will grow to a maximum size. It will grow to a maximum size. Let's say this is the mother bacteria. So this mother bacteria will pop out the babies like a bud. So they will give out babies like a buds like this. So these all are considered as a new bacteria. So this is, we call it as budding. So binary fission means what? They will equally get divided automatically. Fragmentation, they can get divided into multiple ways to grow into a new one. We call it as fragmentation. And budding, they are popping out the babies. So you have to know the methods only. You have to know only the methods of the reproduction, asexual reproduction of bacteria. Clear? We are done with the bacteria. Any doubts with the bacteria? Any doubts? Any doubts with the bacteria? Yes. Bacteria, domain bacteria is done. We are almost done with the domain bacteria. Any doubts? Before we go to the domain eukarya. Second one is fragmentation. Second one is fragmentation. Fragmentation means they can get divided into multiple sizes. They can get divided into multiple sizes. So let's say this cyanobacteria divided into 4 halves. This will be a new one. This will be a new one. This will be a new bacteria. So this will be fragmentation. Like they will regrow into a new part. You cut, that cut part will be a new part. Again, you cut, the new part will be, the cut part will be the new part. So that we call it as the fragmentation, right? Okay, right. Now let's come to the domain eukarya. Under the domain eukarya, you have the kingdoms, right? You have the kingdoms. So under that, you will be studying about the kingdoms. So especially, we will be studying about the domain eukarya. Under the domain eukarya, you have the kingdom. The first kingdom that you're going to study about, kingdom fungi. You are going to talk about what? Kingdom fungi. So you will be learning about the kingdom fungi, and then you will be moving forward. Listen to me carefully. Now, when you talk about domain eukarya, especially we have to talk about their kingdom. So the first kingdom that we are going to study is kingdom fungi. And I already told you that domain eukarya is the eukaryotes. Eukaryotes in the sense what? If you have a cell with an organized nucleus, we call it as eukaryotes, which means the fungi is also considered as the eukaryotic cell. They also have what? They also have eukaryotic cell. So if you take fungi, they are considered as unicellular fungi, as well as they also considered as multicellular fungi. So you have unicellular as well as multicellular fungi. So can you see the fungi through your naked eyes? You cannot see the fungi through the naked eyes, but a part of a fungi, a reproductive structure of a fungi can be seen through our naked eyes. That we call it as the mushroom. That we call it as what? The mushroom. So what is the scientific name for the mushroom? We call it as agaricus. We call it as what? Agaricus. So a part of a fungi, that means it's not fungi. The reproductive structure of the fungi that you can see is the mushroom, especially this mushroom considered as the multicellular. But can I see the unicellular fungi? I can't see them. But listen to me, you have studied an experiment regarding the fungi. What did you do in grade 8? You had a piece of bread, you sprinkled some water, or you soak the bread in the water and you keep it out for 3 days, you see some black color structure form on the bread. So that we call it as what? We call it as mucor. Can we see one mucor? No. When the fungi is grown into collections, into millions only, we will be able to see through our naked eye. So we cannot see one fungi. When the fungi is combination into millions of fungi, then only we will be able to see through our naked eye. Have seen people on their face, like they will have some like white patches. We call aluham, Temal in Tamil. Have you heard some people with the white patches on their skin, aluham white patches? Or we call it as Temal. So can we see one Temal? I mean, like, can you see one fungi there? No. How do you see that white color patch? When there's millions of fungi on the face only, you will be able to see that white patch as a white patch. So that means several fungi together. Did you understand? So fungi is microscopic. What you see through your naked eyes is the group of fungi. You see the group of fungi. So both the fungi and bacteria will have the same advantage, same disadvantage. So what is the advantage of fungi? We can take it as decomposition. We can take it as what? Decomposition. Then food spoilage. Most of the time food spoilage is done by the bacteria we don't eat, but nowadays we eat mushroom. What is the highest nutrition that is present in the mushroom? Most of the people who goes to gym, the sportsmen, they take mushroom. Why? Because mushroom consists of high percentage of what? Protein. So we can use the mushroom as a protein supplement. So this is an advantage. We can eat fungi, isn't it? We can eat fungi. Then what else? We are using fungi as what? As a key ingredient to make bread, especially what? Yeast. Especially yeast. What is the scientific name for the yeast? Saccharomyces. Saccharomyces is one of the name of the yeast. Especially yeast is used as a bakery product. So can you kill the fungi, especially if you get fungus rashes? Can you kill it? Yes, that means they are sensitive for what? They are sensitive for the antibiotics. They are sensitive for the antibiotics. So remember, fungi, bacteria will have same advantages and disadvantages, same features. And fungi also will have some reproductive method. Like bacteria, one is fragmentation. You already know what is fragmentation. They can do the reproduction by binary fission. They can do budding, especially yeast will do the budding. So budding can be done. Then spore production. By the seeds and everything, they can produce what? Fungi can produce more fungi through the spore production, through the seeds. So then what else we can talk about the fungi? That's it. And finally, fungi is like a cell. It's like a cell. The outer part of the fungi, we call it as the cell wall of fungi. The cell wall of the fungi is made up of a substance, we call it as chitin. Even you can find it in the cockroach body also, the chitin. So chitin is the substance where the cell wall of the fungi is created. So these are the ideas you should have about the fungi. Clear? Got it? So that's it about the fungi. Fungi is not an autotrophic, it is an heterotrophic. They depend on another animals for food. So they are heterotrophic, they are made up of substance called chitin, their presence as unicellular, multicellular, they are eukaryotes, they can do the reproduction by fragmentation, binary fission, budding, spore production, and also the one you can see through your naked eyes is mushroom. The name is agaricus, you can use it as a food. Then what else? What is the advantage? They can also cause diseases as well as they can do the decomposition. What else we studied? We also studied, we can find it on the bread. They can also do the food spoilage also, like mucor. Mucor is forming on the bread. So these are the things that you have to know about the fungi. Clear? Got it? Understood? So under the domain Eukarya, you studied about the kingdom fungi. Any doubts about it? Any doubts? Any doubts? Right. So now we are going to study about kingdom Protista. We are going to study about what? We are going to study about kingdom Protista. So let's talk about the kingdom Protista. So next week we will be talking about the kingdom Animalia and kingdom Plantae, and we will be finishing the lesson. So today, once we complete with the kingdom Protista, we will be stopping the class. Okay, we will be ending up the class once we complete with the kingdom Protista. So let's learn about the kingdom Protista and let's continue. Okay, look here. So let's talk about the kingdom Protista. Let's talk about the kingdom Protista. So when you talk about the kingdom Protista, they will also come under the domain Eukarya. So when it comes to kingdom Protista is made up of two types of microorganisms. They are made up of what? Two types of microorganisms. So one microorganism group is protozoa. When protozoa and when the group algae combine together, we call them as kingdom Protista. We call them as what? Kingdom Protista. So when the protozoa and algae, both of them combine together only, we call this kingdom as kingdom Protista. So I will be explaining you the features of the protozoa, and I will be explaining you the features of the algae, and then you will be studying an important point under this, which is not mentioned in your textbook. Okay, so listen to me carefully. So when you talk about kingdom Protista, it is made up of two microorganism group. One is protozoa and algae. So we are going to study about protozoa and algae in comparatively. We are going to study. So when you take the protozoa, remember protozoa is heterotrophic. Most of the time, they are the one who will cause you diseases to other organisms, like what do you say? They will be able to only cause diseases to human living inside the human body and cause diseases, taking their energy, especially on animals and everything. So they are heterotrophic. But algae, you know, they are green in color. They are autotrophic. They can produce their own food. Okay, they can produce their own food. So especially the speciality of this is green color. So most of the, algae, they do not cause diseases. They do not cause diseases. But what are the examples we can take under the protozoa? You have studied about amoeba. Yeah, you have studied about amoeba, paramecium. Then you have studied about what? We have studied about amoeba, paramecium. We have studied about we also have the flagella. We have studied about flagella. They all come under what? Protozoa. So amoeba can cause you disease is amoebiosis. They can cause you disease called amoebiosis. So paramecium can cause you disease called malaria, which can be caused by the which can be carried out by the mosquitoes. Then flagella can, like, sorry, not flagella, we call it as the euglena. I'm sorry. So we say it as what? Euglena. So euglena can cause you sleeping sickness. So amoeba, paramecium, euglena, they have locomotive structures, like we have legs to move. Same like that, amoeba, paramecium, euglena, they have locomotive structures. So amoeba, paramecium has cilia. Amoeba will have the pseudopodia, we call it as the false feet, and then euglena will have the flagella. So these are the structures they have to move from one place to another place. So that's it about the protozoa. Now let's come to the algae. Especially you have seen unicellular algae and multicellular algae. So unicellular algae like diatom, we can take diatom, Chlamydomonas, they all are unicellular. Then what you see through your naked eyes is going to be the ulva, Spirogyra. They all are considered as what? The multicellular algae. So when you talk about algae, algae has so many advantages. You have so many advantages in algae. You know that. Have you seen, like, you have gone to some carnival ice cream shops and everything, right? So in the carnival ice cream, so especially to make ice cream, we are using algae. What is the algae we are using? Coral reef algae. We are using coral reef algae. So that algae has kind of an acid. We call it as alginic acid. We have something called alginic acid. Using the alginic acid only, we are producing ice cream. So ice cream is something that we can eat every day. Due to the sugar content only, we say ice cream is bad for health, not because it is cold. We say it is because of the sugar content only, we say ice cream is bad. Other than that, due to the alginic acid, you don't cause any problems. It's really good for your body. Have you heard about agar? Agar? Have you heard about the agar? What do you think about the agar? So agar in the sense that you solidify a medium, like you eat like a jelly. So this is also done by the sea algae. You have the algae inside the sea. We eat that. Then what else we can say? The main source of the food that is given for the fishes and other aquariums is what? Algae. So algae is a primary producer under the sea. It is a primary producer. So primary producer in the sense what? They are the one who produce food for the fish. So let's say in now, you know, food chain. You have studied about food chain, right? Under the food chain, the first person that comes under the food chain is algae. So algae can be the primary producer in the food chain in the aquatic environment. So let's say if the fish is eating the algae, the fish will be eating the algae. The fish will be eaten by the kingfisher. So this is how the food chain will be working, right? So that is how the food chain will be working when it comes to what? When it comes to algae. And then there is something you have to study under the algae, especially algae, and another person having a good relationship, like algae. And you should know that there is another person, fungi. So fungi and algae has a good relationship. I'll explain you what is that relationship. You have to study that relationship in detail. So before that, did you understand about protozoa? Before that, did you understand about the features of algae? What are the advantages and disadvantages? But you don't find any disadvantages under the algae. The only disadvantage you can find it where? Under the protozoa. Did you understand that first before we talk about the relationship that is between the fungi and the algae and the kingdom Protista? This relation is clear with that? Yes? Okay, right. So now we are going to move with the relationship between the algae and the fungi. There is something called symbiotic, okay? There is something called symbiotic relationship, but this is not explained in your textbook, but I'm explaining this to you. This will come to your O-level. So symbiotic relationship, you are going to study about symbiotic relationship. What is the symbiotic relationship in the sense? Close relationship between two organisms. We call it as what? We call it as, if you don't have these notes, you can write it down. So these things are like some general things you have to note it down in your book. So close relationship between how many organisms? Two organisms, we call it as what? Symbiotic relationship. You can also simplify and call it as symbiosis. We can also call it as what? Symbiosis. In your textbook, they have only provided this word. They haven't explained what is that. So we are going to study about three types of relationship. One, you call it as mutualism. One, you call it as what? Mutualism. Another relationship, we call it as commensalism. Commensalism. Another relationship, we call it as parasitism. We are going to call it as what? Parasitism. Okay, so parasitism, and we have mutualism, commensalism. I'll explain in your language. I'll explain in the way that you understand. Let's say what is mutualism means. There are two best friends. There are two best friends, and say your friend is helping you. You also helping your friend. So that means both of you are getting benefited. Both of you are getting benefited. We call it as what? Mutualism. Commensalism means in your class, your teacher made you to sit with your some other friend. Let's say this one of your, let's imagine your teacher has grouped you into in this way. One highly let's say one student who is good in that particular subject and weak student. One weak student and another one intelligent student. One intelligent student with weak student with that particular subject. That's how teacher has kept. That means one person will get benefited. Will the person who is intelligent will get benefited? He will not get benefited. One person is getting benefited, other person will not get benefited. So you can say none of them are getting harmed. None of them are getting harmed. That means you're not hurting anyone. One person is getting benefited, other person is not getting benefited. That is commensalism. Then parasitism in the sense, let's say, for example, when it comes to parasitism, let's imagine like a tiger. Let's take the tiger and the lion. So if you take the tiger and the lion, one person is getting hurted, right? Let's say if you take the lion is hunting the deer. Let's say the lion is hunting the deer. So deer will die, lion will get benefited, it will get benefited, deer will get hurt. So this is what we call it as one person is harmed, other person is getting benefited. That you call it as parasitism. But before we come to the real part, did you understand the meaning of these three? Did you understand the meaning of these three? Mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. Mutualism means there are two close best friends, both of them are getting benefited, none of them are harmed. Here, commensalism, one person is getting benefited, other person is not getting benefited, no one is harmed. But here in the parasitism, one person will get benefited, other person will be harmed. That we call it as parasitism. Did you understand the meaning before we come to the actual part? Yes. Did you understand that? Did you understand what we are talking before we come to the actual part? Yes. Now we are talking about animals, right? Since we are going to talk about animals, we are going to study all of them. So listen to me. Now, actually, who is having the mutualist relationship is algae. So I said you, fungi and algae is having a very good relationship, like best friends. That is mutualistic relationship. So fungi is a heterotrophic, right? Fungi is a heterotrophic. Algae is a autotrophic, right? So what you need to understand is algae is giving food for the fungi, while fungi is giving protection for the algae. So this is the mutualistic relationship that the fungi and the algae is having. So we call this as mutualistic lichen. So mutualistic lichen in the sense both the algae and fungi is having a good relationship. So that is what I said you, that algae and fungi is having a good relationship, that we call it as mutualistic lichen. So fungi and algae. But in the real life, who is having the commensalism relationship is, have you heard about hermit crab and sea anemone? You know that sea anemone, which is belong to Cnidaria, they cannot move. They cannot move. So what is happening is this sea anemone will be settling on the hermit crab. Let's say this is the crab. So if you take the crab, on top of the head of the crab, sea anemone will be settled. So wherever the crab is moving, sea anemone also will be moved. So is the sea anemone is hurting the crab? No, it's not harming. So sea anemone is getting benefited, but the crab is not getting benefited. So both of them are not harmed. So that relationship is a commensalism relationship in the world of life. Then again, parasitism, I already explained you. Just think you in your head. You have the lice in your head, you know, the insect that will suck blood on your head, the hair inside your head, you know, what will happen? The lice will get what? The lice or the ticks, we can call it as ticks or the lice. What will it do? It will suck the blood from your head and it will get benefited. You will be harmed. So that is a parasitism, like a lion and a deer. So this is a parasitism, but parasitism relationship. Clear with that? Got the idea? Understood? Any doubts? Any doubts? Understood? Any doubts about it? So what did we cover today? We studied about the classification of organism. We studied about the scientist's name. And then we studied about the hierarchy organization, the organization level of organism. I'll explain you the parasitism. So we studied about the hierarchy level of this organism. We studied about it. And then what else we studied? Then domain archaea, domain bacteria, under domain eukarya, we studied about kingdom fungi, kingdom protista. So kingdom protista, someone asked me, under the kingdom protista, we are going to talk about algae. So algae is having a good relationship with who? With the fungi. So that we call it as mutualistic lichen. It's a mutual relationship, right? So someone didn't understand what is parasitism. Parasitism in the sense, one person will get benefited, other person will be harmed. Like lion is hunting the deer. So when the lion is hunting the deer, lion is getting benefited, but the deer is harmed. That is parasitism. And someone asked me how the questions will be appearing in the paper. In the paper, they will not ask you to explain specially. They will ask you to answer this on the MCQ, O-level paper. But this part will come to your unit 15 of your grade 11. Unit 15, grade 11. Again, you will be studying about this relationship. So especially they will ask you which pair is having the mutualistic relationship or which symbiotic relationship. So they can ask you which pair of animals or which group of animal is having the parasitism relationship. So they can give you example as lion dash, they can give you lion dash deer, and they can give you some other examples. So you know what is parasitism, you know what is commensalism, you know what is mutualism. So when you know all of them, you can identify the relationship. Did you understand? So this will come to your MCQ, especially MCQ. Clear? But why did I explain you this relationship? Just to make sure to understand the relationship between the fungi and the algae. So, but even though it's not mentioned in your textbook, you have to know this. This is something that you have to know generally in science. Clear? Got it? Understood? Right. So that's it for today. We will continue our Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia, and we will be completing the lesson 13 by next week. And we will be starting in 14. It's about the reproduction and everything. And yes, so usually I will give you a small heads up to the classes if you're really interested. And the classes we have every Thursdays and Fridays. Like we have 8 classes per month. So totally 8 classes per month for science, grade 10. So usually our classes will be Thursday, 6:30 p.m. theory class. What we study in theory class, we will be revising Friday, 6:30 p.m. as a revision. So I will be providing 5 model revisions, like model revision in the sense, one you have the past paper questions, O-level past paper question. One we will be discussing unit-wise past paper questions. And then we will be discussing the model questions. We will be discussing revision questions, quick revision questions, which means we have different kinds of questions to discuss on that particular day. So we will be discussing. So just 2,200 only, that for the whole 8 classes per month, you will be accessing 2,200. So you will be learning everything, and I will be completing your syllabus on time. You will get colorful short notes as well. Okay. So that's it about the class details, and thanks for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the class, you understood. I hope you don't have any doubts in the class. If you had any doubts, you can just contact me through this number. And others, you all can leave. Have a good day. Take care. And Assalamu alaikum and good night. Okay. Have a good day. Thanks a lot, Hima. And thanks for all of you all.